few years ago, I started a deep dive into 60s rock and pop music that I'm still kind of in the middle of. I honestly can't remember what exactly set it off, but I do remember there being several bands and albums that sort of sustained my interest in the time period. The 60s were full of musical innovation across the board due to things like technological advancements, cultural shifts, and new social attitudes. And sometimes these musical experiments went poorly and were sort of left in the 60s. And of course, there are plenty of examples of groups piggybacking on the innovative and creative sounds of other bands, which is like the main driving force behind the music industry. I know arguably it sounded more awkward and forced in the 60s than it does now, but you wouldn't have a lot of that piggybacking without the great musical acts that set the bar, the works that really defined the diverse musical landscape of the 60s and beyond. I'm going to be talking about one of those works today, Moody Blues, Days of Future Past, released in November of 1967. Absolutely beautiful album art. Love the watercolor. I'm not sure how I feel about all this up here. Kind of distracts from the beauty of it, but marketing is marketing, I suppose. This is one of the most innovative and creative and beautiful albums of all time, let alone the 60s, as far as I'm concerned, and I have an uncharacteristically emotional attachment to it. Ironically, the Moody Blues were a little bit behind the curve on their first album. The Magnificent Moodies, released in 1965, was basically just a straightforward pop rock album that sounded a lot like what rhythm and blues and beat musicians were doing in the early 60s. And this is not that album. This is not Magnificent Moodies, but it's basically the same thing. This is like the North American release of that album. It's got pretty much the same track list. There's some different tracks. Strangely enough, some of the song titles are different. I'm not sure why. It's got a nice endorsement from Donovan on the back as well. It's got a couple of alright songs on it. Most importantly, Go Now is on here. Pretty good cover song. Questionable recording quality, but it's still an alright song. Really good performance. Very good vocal arrangement. And it's got a pretty cool music video from a time where music videos weren't really a thing. Although I think I might prefer the original version of Go Now, performed by Bessie Banks. Just sounds kind of more natural coming from her. Anyway, Go Now was mildly successful for the Moody Blues. Peaked at like number 10. At any rate, it wasn't the mega hit that Decca Records and their child company Deram Records were hoping for. Early Moody Blues songs like Go Now and arguably Let Me Go, with its tasteful flute accompaniment, showed that the Moody Blues were capable of something beyond the trendy pop rock of the year, yet their first album is packed with filler. And I know how pointless it is to say, boy, if every song on the album was good, then the album would be so much better. Especially for a pop album in the 60s, when this sort of thing was so common. It was kind of just a business model back then. But this style of music was on its way out, and the Moody Blues needed to adapt. They were kind of stuck in a rut and needed to make a change. They needed a way to break away from the derivative pop rock and onto something that was truly their own. Deram Records must have picked up on the potential of the Moody Blues, because they approached the band and they were like, hey, do you guys want to record an entire album with an orchestra? And the band must have welcomed this change of pace, because they were like, yeah, sure, bring it on. There was no real precedent for this, not to this extent at least. I mean, I guess there were like classically influenced poppy show tunes. I know that there's like traditional pop that had classical accompaniment, but those spheres hadn't really met the rock sphere up until this point. The Beach Boys and the Beatles had been toying around with classical accompaniment in their own pop rock music to great effect, but they hadn't been doing anything that would be nearly as symphonic as this new Moody Blues album would be. Everyone involved took a pretty big risk, and the Moody Blues nailed it. Musically, I mean. They nailed it musically. Critically, it was met with just kind of moderate success. Critics didn't seem to be in love with it, and it took until 1972 for the then reissued Nights in White Satin single to breach the Billboard Top 10. And that's how it seems to go with a lot of the most influential music acts. And I'm not going to pretend that if I was around in 1967 when this album was released, that I would be as big of a fan of it as I am now. I honestly have no idea how I would react to it if I heard it back in 1967. 2020 me has all of this additional musical context. My musical interests have been shaped by decades of music that weren't around in the 60s. Still, there is a part of me that's a little bit envious of the people that did get to listen to it when it came out. In case it's not obvious, I love this album. I've been listening to it pretty much non-stop in preparation for this video. It's been stuck in my head from sunrise to sunset. And I want to talk about it, obviously, so I will see you tomorrow morning, dark and early. Well, the album opens up with an overture arranged by Peter Knight, who used the music of the Moody Blues as a reference point, and performed by the London Festival Orchestra. Which which is pretty standard for orchestral suites. Sort of runs through the melodies that you'll hear later on in the album. Makes repeated listens much more engaging as well. And this overture is really what sets this album apart from other pop and rock albums that were incorporating orchestral music. The orchestra here plays a much more integral role in the music of the album. Oh. So after the overture, we hear a recited poem. Vocalist Mike Pinder opens up with
Cold-hearted orb that rules the night, removes the colors from our sight.
Great. I was trying to keep the volume level down, but whatever. He is, of course, referring to the moon and the general darkness of the wee hours of the morning. He ends with
Brave Helios, wake up your steeds. Bring the warmth the countryside needs.
The Sun. This is a concept album. One of the earliest rock concept albums, in fact. It's about a day. Just a normal day-night cycle through the eyes of a protagonist. Pretty simple concept, but you know, it's pretty intuitive for one of the first rock concept albums. Vivaldi has the seasons, Holst has the planets, and the Moody Blues have a day. Anyway, the sun is coming up, and Mike went ahead and woke up everyone in the neighborhood, so let's move on. A song for the morning people out there. You know, the people who wake up smiling at 5 a.m. to the sounds of birds chirping outside their window, excited to go downstairs and stare out the window at the fresh morning dew with a mug of coffee cupped in their hands. You know, the people I'm jealous of. If I wake up that early, it's usually a huge mistake and I go right back to sleep. Love the song though. It opens up with gentle woodwinds and strings from the orchestra, signifying the theoretically gentle transition from sleep to wakefulness. Vocalist Justin Hayward enters, describing this new day with poetic flourishes describing just how much potential today has. I do sense a bit of underlying anxiety in the song and the instrumentals. Maybe that's just me. New days can be nerve-wracking, I suppose. Anything can happen, or nothing can happen. And one of my favorite parts of the... Do you guys hear that? Do you hear that? That sounds like a Mellotron. The Mellotron is one of my favorite musical instruments. I'll save the details for a later video, but basically if you don't know what it is, it's like a keyboard that plays audio samples from tape. It differs from a synthesizer which generates a tone in real time when you push a key, and it's different from a modern keyboard which plays a digital sound from a memory bank when a key is pressed. The Mellotron would later find a place as a staple of progressive rock music, usually mimicking the sounds of string instruments. I personally love the imprecise, warped, and sometimes haunting sound of a Mellotron string voice. And this album is one of the first major examples of a Mellotron being used in rock music. I mean, the Beatles were toying with it, of course, and there were a couple other pop hits around this time that incorporated it, but the Moody Blues really demonstrated how much potential it had rather than using it as a novelty. I'm hearing the sounds of children playing outside. This day has truly begun. Not really, it's freezing outside, but I just need to segue into the next. Balloons flying, children sighing, what a day to go kite flying. Yes, this is a very sugary song. The playful orchestral opening transitions into lyrics describing the fun that only children can have, converting everyday items into fantastical playthings with the power of their naively creative mind. Although this is a very upbeat song, I do sense a little bittersweetness, as if the protagonist would do anything just to be able to see the world through the eyes of a child. Things were just simpler, you know? People planned my day for me, they drove me around everywhere, I had just had so much free time. And people made food for me, for free. I'm hungry. The orchestral arrangement that opens up this song sets the tone really well. People need a break from work, and they're hungry. The resulting chaos is described pretty well in the song to the accompaniment of a really driving, straightforward, psychedelic rock and roll groove. It sort of calms down for the bridge, which might represent the relatively minuscule amount of time that people actually have to relax during their lunch break. Keeps your mind occupied if you want it to be, I guess. Really loving the psychedelic guitar solo in here. Also, the Mellotron break sounds almost anachronistic with how modern the voice sounds. I don't know, it just sounds to me like a a campy late 80s synth solo to me. Well, back to it. I don't know about you, but after I eat lunch, the last thing I want to do is go right back to work. I have more important things to do, like digestion. My brain can't focus on anything after I eat. Maybe that's a me problem, but I can relate to the song in a possibly unintended way because of that. The lyrics of the song read like they were written by somebody in the middle of an acid trip describing a beautiful escape from reality where none of the problems of their real life matter anymore. And the music plays into that as well, with the Mellotron providing a dreamy, psychedelic texture to the song. It's sort of how my brain operates right after I eat lunch. I don't like hallucinate or anything, but like, I just want to chill out, man. Give me a minute to recharge. Let my mind wander a little bit, you know? Lunch is very important to me. Anyway, the active part of the day is over now, and everyone just is real excited to get home. I don't know about you, but I am exhausted. Sun's going down, it's getting darker outside, and the music is getting darker as well, with a suspenseful, strangely ominous piano lick signifying the end of the active part of the day and the anxious desire to run home. There might be some anxieties at home as well that this protagonist has in the back of their mind. Who knows? At any rate, it's finally time to get away from the stresses of the day. Take your shoes off, have a nice dinner. The rest of your day is yours. The music changes again, and the suspense is gone. I'm not too big on some of the vocal melodies in this part of the song, but the instrumentation is very effective. The light outside is fading away. This song sounds almost out of place compared to the rest of the album. The instrumentals sound ancient and ritualistic. The vocals are pretty creepy too, to be honest. The whole song is kind of eerie, possibly signifying the mysterious goings-on outside, contrasting with the relative safety and familiarity of your own home. What's going on out there anyway? Strangely, the instrumentals seem to pick up as we transition outside. Natural light is now gone, and most people have retreated indoors, but the music implies that something is going on out here. Nature is behaving in a way that we don't get to witness very often. Nocturnal animals come out and get to work. Their day is just starting as ours is ending. But that is none of my business. I'm ready for bed, and it's freezing outside. Let's go back in. Sleep is nice. I don't want to generalize too much, but I think it's safe to say that most people like sleep. I like sleep. What I don't like is trying to get to sleep. For our protagonist, laying in bed is just a reminder of how lonely he is. The person he loves doesn't love him back. He lays in darkness, unable to think about anything else. He is unable to move on. And the result is quite possibly the most beautiful piece of music ever written, as far as I'm concerned. The Mellotron here provides an uneasy, dreamlike atmosphere as Hayward's echoey and forlorn vocals describe his nighttime depression. The simple chorus of "I love you" is met with very bizarre, ghostly backing vocals. It sounds like nothing else I've ever heard. It's the pestering voice that makes sure that he doesn't get a good night's sleep. Killer flute solo as well from Ray Thomas. And up until this point, the orchestra and the band had been kept mostly separate, with the orchestra playing interludes in between the band's songs, but they meet in this song on the final verse and chorus in an overwhelmingly emotional wall of sound that literally brings tears to my eyes. Like, I'm not even exaggerating. This song is on a very, very, very short list of songs that have made me legitimately cry. It's a perfect song. The buildup of the entire album concludes. You spent an entire day with the Moody Blues from midnight to midnight, and the resolution isn't satisfying. I mean, musically it is. Musically it's perfect, but the spoken word passage that closes this album out after detailing the last moments of the night continues with a very familiar series of lines as the entire weight of the album comes full circle.
Cold-hearted orb that rules the night, removes the colors from our sight.
And the sun will come up again, a new day with limitless potential. He'll see children playing outside and feel that bittersweet nostalgia. He'll feel a strong urge to escape his repetitive life, but he won't pursue it. and the sun will go back down, he'll get in bed, and he won't be able to sleep. And the sun will come up again, a new day with limitless potential. He'll see children playing outside and feel that bittersweet nostalgia. He'll feel a strong urge to escape his repetitive life, but he won't pursue it. In short, take care of yourself. I know it's corny to say, but seriously, take care of yourself, embrace your future, and try to make the best of it. Our protagonist here isn't taking care of himself. The glimpses of optimism and hope that we see at certain times of the day show that he knows that he needs to make a change, but he doesn't pursue it for whatever reason. And I really hope that he breaks this cycle of depression. Clearly he's in a rut. I can relate. I know many other people can. This album has improved my life. I hope it can improve yours. I understand that I can't do this album justice just by sitting here and talking about it, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention. Thanks for listening.